Okay, so I'm going to show you something that actually happens quite often when it comes to making different pieces. Um, so a lot of times, sometimes you find out that like one piece is bigger than the other because of the way that like the sizing comes out after you cut out from the Worbla piece. Um, so I'm going to show you exactly what I mean, and with these pieces, because I was doing the fitting on my others, like the back piece of my armor, and I'm noticing that in order to fit it onto the back piece of my armor, I had to actually make the pieces a lot smaller. So for that to fit well connected with the front piece, I'm actually going to have to trim away part of the front piece because it's just not even with it. And I'll show you exactly why. So if you look at, okay, I'm trying to make my camera move a bit. If you look at the back piece of my armor, you have the neck piece that is here. And essentially what I did was that I had cut away both bottom sides of the actual neck piece that goes with it. So when joining the front pieces together, you have the sides here and here that actually have to move up with the sides on that side. And so now I have this part that's essentially a lot longer. If you can see, it's got like maybe a few centimeters longer than it should be for the front panel. So not too big, not too difficult to work with. But that does happen a lot. If you are joining pieces together, it's gonna happen like that. So what we're gonna do is just actually fit it like you normally would. I would suggest though, if you are placing two pieces on top of each other or any kind of decoration, I suggest you leave that to the end and focus more on your main pieces first to see if they do fit well with everything else, because if not, if you do it ahead of time, you won't know like if you have to cut away some of the decoration that you had spent like hours on or whatever. So yeah, would not recommend that. Just do the main pieces first. So another important factor in which you want to remember is always label your pieces. It comes up quite often where there's several pieces that look the same, but they're actually a little bit sized differently. So what's really important is to actually make sure that they're labeled. Um, Again, don't worry about marking up your stuff, because if you are painting it later on, it's very easy to paint over it. In this case, I'm using pencil to write on the Worbla because it actually does work nicely once you're on the rough side. But like I said, on the inside part where it's shiny and glossy, it's a little bit more tough to mark up. So when you have your pieces and everything, it's really good to actually have that marking there. So for instance, I've written, I don't know if it's possible to see it, maybe not, but I've written left side for the left side of my armor with the cut part where I'm going to be cutting off very soon. So I'm just going to take care of that right now. And because we're having to cut away a part that has already been sandwiched together, it's going to be a little bit more tough to actually to get put back together into a nice manner. It might not be perfect, but I think I can deal with that. Yeah, so what you're going to have after you cut off your piece is, like I said, the opening edge here of the piece that like you have to correct. So what I can do to suggest it is if you cut it at an angle, sort of, you'll have a little bit of Worbla at the edge to play with. In my case, I cut it straight across because I didn't want to risk having a problem with it. But if you've been working and cutting out pieces of Worbla, you should already, by now, have scrap pieces hanging around. In my case, I have an entire bag full of them. But what's great about Worbla is that you, like, honestly, you don't really throw up that many pieces. You can reuse them as many times as you want, and you can use it for designs and everything else, like any small little detail to work with. So it really is cost efficient sometimes, not all the time. But if you can, like I said, get the pieces that uh, are more useful for what you're doing, then it's a really good idea to keep them around still and not throw them out right away. So in my case, I just cut this piece off here. Unfortunately, it's still, well, I'm still waiting for it to sort of cool off a bit. As soon as it does, you should still be able to, and I'm just waving it around a bit right now to speed up the airtime. You should be able to still, like, be able to pull it apart from the actual craft foam itself, which I'm doing right now. Okay, so what we're going to do is just you're going to do some patchwork. Since I already know it's like the same length because I've used it before, I'm just going to get a small little strip, maybe possibly the same size as what's there. Just eye it and check to see how much I need off of it. And just cut what I think is close enough to what I'm missing on there. Of course, if you want it to be extra straight, I suggest using a ruler. In my case, I really don't care because it's going to look straight anyways once I'm done with it. And we're going to just take our heat gun again and re-warm it back up. As mentioned in the previous video, I said that like Worbla is reusable, so if it is cooled down, you can always reheat the piece and use it again. So that's what we're doing. So I'm reattaching this piece. It seems to be a lot longer. That's what's weird. Sometimes it stretches out too. Worbla likes to stretch, so. There we go. Just gonna tear off that piece, and you can just work it into the pattern here. And there you go. It's all closed up now again. Really cool. Awesome. So we're just gonna heat this one up, cut it up. That should be good enough. I'm just gonna cut off a bit of it, not too much. So I don't want to risk not having it do the full shaping of it. Let's just do that bottom part here. Take a look at it. It seems to be a bit better. Does that look good? I think it looks good. Alright, so now that you have two pieces, okay, don't worry about the bottom part though, we'll fix that afterwards. Because if everything goes smoothly, it should actually be covered by the front piece anyway, so it's just a panel piece. What you can do now, which is really cool, and I just almost burnt myself, be careful with the heat gun. Yeah, another thing is when the actual Worbla itself is really, really warm, I suggest keeping it out of the way of other pieces of Worbla that are actually hanging around. Because what happens if you leave a heat piece on top of excess Worbla pieces, you get this effect, which is basically all my little scraps that I had cut out earlier got stuck to the other piece that I had put down. And if you're wanting to reuse that piece, well, you know exactly what. So, alright, how easy it is, and that same effect that just happened is what we're going to be doing here. So, taking this small piece here, heating it up on one side, the side that you're going to be putting it on. Keep in mind, these are the rough sides now that we're using, and this is what's really cool about it. When I said that it sticks to itself. So I'm trying to line it up as even as possible. And this is when you might want to use also a piece of scrap craft foam. And you're just going to push it down because I've heated it up quite a bit. And what you're going to do by pressing down on it so that it gives it the effect that it's actually connected to it and it's like basically pressed into it enough so it looks like some kind of metal piece afterwards when you paint it. So I'm just going to heat it up a bit more, not too much, because we don't want to get a lot of bubbles in there. And we're going to take this, probably should work with a larger piece, but just working along the edges and pressing it directly onto the other piece of Worbla that you just sandwiched it to. This part takes probably a longer time to do than to actually just normally put it together, because I mean if you're trying to put everything straight. And once you get yourself some Worbla yourself, you'll be able to test it out and see exactly what I mean by when it's sandwiched together like that, so that you can work it with your fingers onto the actual thing itself. See, right now what I've done is actually I've created some bubbles onto it. I don't know if you can see, but there's bubbles here. For my other tutorial, I've basically noted that you can pat it down with your fingers or craft foam or something like that to try to get the air bubbles out, or you can try to reheat it if it doesn't work normally with your fingers. Or there's the other method that people are sometimes using, and it's to take a sharp needle and poke it, which I don't always recommend because it can ruin the look of your piece that you're working with. So I'm just going to do that right now. Pat it down. It's very time consuming, like I said. It's like Tupperware. It kind of reminds me of Tupperware anywhere. It's trying to get the air out of it, and we have to lift it up in order to make it escape. So I'm just trying to make it work like that. Alright, so I've had it pat down just a bit. There are still some bubbles that are present. So I'm just going to have to reshape it anyways, so I'm not too worried about it for now. But this is what it looks like when you have two pieces sandwiched together on top of each other. It's stuck like that, it doesn't move. So what I'm suggesting though is very carefully when you are putting it on, make sure you're putting it on exactly where you want it to go, because if not, you're going to have really a hellish time trying to take it off afterwards. And because it sticks to each other, there's chances that it would rip and there would be causing holes, and well, let's just say you're not going to be happy about it. So that's what it looks like. It's pretty cool. And I'm going to show you what it looks like when you attach it to your armor.